I don't have a user. Okay.
I hear you quitting. 2 jobs. Yeah, it's a lot.
Do you know who that is, Ben?
Family life. He said a few hours a week. It's like every day you have to
Nick.
just
Nick.
wow.
All right, good evening. Sorry for the delay. Welcome to the Board of Education Public Budget Hearing. Today, Monday, May 9th, 2022. Let's start by sharing the pledge. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. This is the requirement by law, a week or so before the public budget vote, that every school district has to have a public budget hearing. And with that, I will turn it over to Ms. Costello.
Set? Yes. I got it down to 50 slides, so it's going to be just sit back, relax. Welcome to our budget hearing. The budget vote is next Tuesday, and like Mr. Camberg said, we're required by law a week before to provide this budget hearing, which goes over the budget numbers, the contingency budget, capital expenditures, and all that fun information. Budget newsletters are in the mail. The community, if they did not receive them today, should start receiving them this week, and they're also on our website. All presentations from the budget are on our website as well, and we'll get going. So the budget priorities for 22-23 school year. It's the final year of our strategic plan. It completes our leadership organizational structure. It maintains and enhances the programs provided to students, provides professional development necessary to continue this path into the future, and it continues to enhance and improve the district facilities. The increase from the current year to the proposed budget for next year is a 3.65% increase to a total budget of $66.3 million. This is the breakdown between the administrative piece of the budget, which is 10.25% of the whole budget. Program is 78.4, and capital is 11.35. This budget brings a tax levy increase of 0.68% to the taxpayers. We have total non-tax revenue increase of approximately 21%. Most of that is in a state aid increase, and most of that is, as everybody may be aware, Governor Hochul making whole on her promise to round out everybody's foundation aid. So between this year and next year, all districts in New York should be receiving their full foundation aid calculation. So that was about $550,000 of the increase, and then we also had about a $500,000 increase in building aid, because as we finished the major field work project and submitted all those final cost reports, we start getting building aid on that right away. The appropriated fund balance through the budget workshops and discussions with the board was increased to $644,000, and use of reserves of $530,000, and transfer from capital of $650,000, which I will go over once again. All those other lines below property tax levy, those help offset the budget expenditures and help keep the tax levy as low as 0.68%. Part of the budget hearing, we need to disclose what a contingency budget would look like. A contingency budget would be in case the budget that is proposed gets voted down. The board can decide to go right to the contingency budget, or they can go for a second revote with the same budget or a second revote with a lower budget. Contingency budget, strict guidelines. We have to keep the same tax levy in 22-23 that we have for the current year. So that's why you see the 57,675,362 the same in the current year and the contingent column. Total non-tax revenues, we wouldn't be able to offer up our facilities. That's the slight difference there. We wouldn't be able to get outside revenues for that. The appropriated fund balance would most likely go away because we would need those savings to put into reserves to offset future budget expenditure increases due to a contingent budget, and the use of reserves we would decrease as well because we'd have to save more for future years to balance the budget. The contingency budget would force us to reduce the proposed budget by $1.86 million. That we would be limited, we couldn't do capital expenditures, only if it's in directly impacting students' health and safety or the delivery of the program. Otherwise, it cannot be purchased under a contingent budget. The capital projects planned in the $1.65 million proposed transfer to capital line. A lot of these things are from the security audit from a few years ago, upgrading two-way radio systems in all the buildings. Well, outside, we want to do the outfield fencing for the softball field, PA system and phone upgrade here at Wheatley, the bathroom renovations in the 100 corridor here, Willits Road, gym and stage floor repair and finish, fire alarm upgrade, and another boiler upgrade. And north side, we have bathroom ventilation work to do. Equipment purchases. We're required to disclose this by law as well. We are proposing to buy a new bus to replace our aging fleet so we can maintain the routes in-house. Building maintenance and grounds maintenance is requesting these various equipment to do their job more efficiently. It's either replacing older equipment that's not working or, providing them with equipment that allow them to do a job more efficiently. And the inflatable batting cage for indoor and outdoor use, which will be for baseball, softball, golf as well. Existing capital reserves that are still outstanding in some shape or form is the 2015 capital reserve. All the projects are complete. The major project in that was the tennis courts. We actually have a remaining balance of $1 million in that reserve. And now that the projects are all complete, what we can do with that is bring it back into the general fund, and what we're proposing is to increase that transfer to capital by that $650,000 and realign it with other priority items that we can move up on our timetable to get those projects done, mainly the boiler and the PA system upgrade, which we're probably a year or two out. We're asking to redirect this money into those projects. The 2019 capital reserve, it is funded at $5.1 million right now, and there is going to be a proposition on next Tuesday's ballot to get permission to spend that money on the projects that were approved back in May 2019. We talked about this through the budget process. We were able to accelerate the funding of this reserve as a result of COVID and the elimination of a lot of programs during COVID. So we did put money into this reserve quicker and sooner than we thought we could. But on the positive side, we think if this gets approved, we will be able to do these projects at least 2 to 3 years ahead of time. So this would be the air conditioning in Wheatley's big gym, little gym, and cafeteria, replace Wheatley auditorium flooring and seating, renovate the 3 science labs at Wheatley, and replace the north side slate roof. And all those projects, if this proposition is approved, we can get going with SED approval, and we hope to get them done and started and hopefully completed next summer. This is what the proposition will look like on the ballot next Tuesday. And just summarizing everything we talked about in the beginning of what this budget includes and incorporates. We had all the presentations from the buildings, the administrators. We talked about the capital quite a bit this process, and all those presentations, all that information is available on the website. All the board meetings, budget workshops are recorded as well, and all there for you to view. The vote is next Tuesday from 7 a.m. to 9 p.m. here at the Wheatley Gymnasium. And that's all I have.
Great. Any questions from the public at this point? Seeing and hearing no questions, I'm going to thank Ms. Castanway. I'm going to turn the presentation over to Mr. John Sheehan. That's going to sort of give a Election Day update.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is John Sheehan, the counsel to the Board of Education, and this evening I'll provide a little overview, short overview on the election process for the 22 2022 annual school district budget vote and election. The budget vote and election is under the jurisdiction of the Board of Education. The Board of Education, through its policies, appoints a chairperson of elections. The chairperson of elections calls the meeting to order. The Board of Education designates a chief election inspector, and the district clerk serves as the clerk of all meetings and elections, including the budget vote and election. The district clerk keeps a true and accurate record of all the proceedings, files the written record within 24 hours after the election. The Board of Education appoints a deputy clerk and election inspectors. Polls open at 7 a.m. on May 17th in the gymnasium at the Wheatley School located at 11 Bacon Road, Old Westbury, New York. At that time, distant markers will be posted 100 feet from the polling place for the purpose of designating an area that's free from electioneering. Election inspectors will inspect the machines before the machines are used. All counters are placed at 0, ballot labels are properly set, and machines are in proper condition for use. The scanners and vote tabulators are provided by the Nassau County Board of Elections to scan ballots and tabulate the results. The scanners use physical and system access controls, including lockable doors, tamper-evident seals, and access codes to secure sensitive components and election files. They include key-locked cases for transportation and shipping. On the day of the election, voters are provided with privacy booths to mark their ballots. The chief election inspector and election inspectors are present to address voters' concerns and to prevent electioneering at the polls. Spoiled and defective ballots are sealed in envelopes endorsed by election inspectors and placed in the ballot box. The Nassau County Board of Elections is available to address any emergency issues with the scanners/tabulators. Ballot security is maintained throughout the election and budget vote process by storage either in the scanner's tabulator or in a ballot box for ballots that are not scanned. Closing of the polls. The district clerk transmits absentee voters' envelopes received by 5 p.m. on the day of the election to the election inspectors. The election inspectors check the register of poll list to verify the absentee ballots did not vote in person. The chair announces the closure of the polls at 9 p.m., and any voters who are present are permitted to vote. Once the polls close, the election inspectors print the results from the scanners/vote tabulators. The absentee ballots are cast and canvassed, and the votes for each proposition and candidate is tallied and counted by the election inspectors. Election inspectors announce to the chairperson the results of the budget vote and election. The chairperson shall declare the results as announced by the election inspectors. Poll closing is conducted in public under the supervision of the chief election inspector. Any candidate may appoint poll watchers to observe the election proceedings. The law offices of Guercio & Guercio provides an attorney throughout the day on the date of the budget vote and election to answer any questions. We have an office also staffed with attorneys who are able to research any question that may come in that the attorney may not know at that day on that time. Any questions? Any questions from the board?
Thank you. Please just check with the public one more time, see if there's any questions.
Any questions? Thanks.
Thank you. Great. With that, it is 8:06, so we're able to move straight into the business meeting of the Board of Education. So I'm going to adjourn the special meeting, public budget hearing, I should say, excuse me, and move straight into the business meeting of the Board of Education. We'll get started. Okay. We're going to start with the student report. I don't see any student representative here this evening. That's what I figured. Thank you, Dr. Feeney. Okay, superintendent's report.
Nothing today.
Nothing for the superintendent's report, so noted, thank you. School board report, I'm just going, I'm going to ask our attorney to update the public on where we are in custodial negotiations.
Oh, yes.
Good evening. This evening, I'll provide a brief report on the status of the board's negotiations with the CSEA custodial unit. The parties have been negotiating the terms of successor collective bargaining agreement, and the parties proceeded to mediation and enlisted the service of a mediator appointed by the Public Employment Relations Board. The parties met with the mediator on 3 occasions, and the mediator met separately with the unit on 1 occasion. With the efforts of the PERB-appointed mediator, the parties were able to reach an agreement on the terms and conditions of a successor contract. This evening, we were fully expected to ratify a memorandum of agreement with the custodial unit. Unfortunately, the unit did not ratify the MOA. The parties will now proceed to fact-finding, which is the next stage in the negotiations process. Any questions from the board?
Thank you, Mr. Sheehan.
Thank you.
That concludes the school board report. We'll move into just double-checking. First read of policy 2350, board meeting procedures. Mr. Sheehan, I just want to confirm that the reason the board is looking at this policy today is to align the policy with the new state law, where the law was adjusted as a result of some of the COVID regulations that were originally, of the regulations that were put in place as a result of COVID, that are now permanent new changes in the statute. Is that correct?
That's correct. The new statute provides that board members may participate via video conferencing from locations that are inaccessible to the public under extraordinary circumstances. The new law requires written procedures be enacted to implement this law, and this policy enacts those written procedures.
Okay, and it's the board's understanding that if we didn't update the policy as such, and we did have a board member that had an extraordinary circumstance, the board would, asked to have a meeting via video conference, the board would first have to have a special meeting to vote on that ability. And considering it's an extraordinary circumstance, the timeline would most likely not allow for that special meeting to take place. But nonetheless, the law says that we would have to have a special meeting in order to vote for the extraordinary circumstance of an unposted meeting. Is that correct?
That's correct. The procedure is a discretionary procedure with the Board of Education. It requires the Board of Education itself, or by delegating to an individual, to determine whether or not the reasons given by a board member who cannot appear in person qualify as an extraordinary circumstance. That would require a board meeting to vote on that issue, or a written policy that would delegate that to a specific individual, as this policy does.
Great, thank you. So with that, on the first
Let me
read, go ahead.
just, that doesn't alter the other state law that allows for video participation of board members if it's posted. For example, if someone's away or traveling, if it's 24-hour notice, that's still in effect.
That is accurate. That law still exists. However, that law requires that both the physical place where the meeting is taking place and the remote location where that board member is present both be posted as a meeting and both be accessible to the public. This new law does permit a Board of Education member to participate from an inaccessible location under this policy.
And just to confirm, because this is discretionary as opposed to mandatory, where we would have to post that meeting, where there was no due notice and the ability to place the location was available. In this case, it's really discretionary as a result of the extraordinary circumstance, and that's why it's up to the board to either move forward on this policy and/or have a special meeting to allow for that situation to take place.
That's correct. It's both discretionary and requires determination as to whether or not the board member's reasons constitute extraordinary circumstances.
Great, thank you. So
John-
with that, go ahead.
John, it's
Mr.
also my understanding that the 50% of the board, a quorum of the board, must be at the posted location?
That is correct. A quorum of the Board of Education must be in person at a location that is accessible to the public.
So any other questions and/or comments on the first read? Seeing no further questions or comments, I'm going to turn to the public. Any questions or comments on first read, policy 2350, board meeting procedures? Seeing no questions or comments, I'm going to move off the first read. Thank you. I'm going to move to open time. Do we have any slips? Seeing no slips, thank you. I'm going to move into the action items. I'm going to group action items 4.1 to 4.5 together. May I have a second? Mr. Keefe, discussion. Seeing and hearing no discussion, I'm going to call for the vote. All in favor? Ms. Makin? Items pass 5-0. Thank you. I'm going to take item 4.6 by itself. May I have a second? Mr. Fallerino, discussion. Mr. Hirsch?
Are we anticipating using the entire 4 million?
No, no, but it's the max we would need. But since COVID, we had to do a little more then because the tax collections were delayed. So we like to give ourselves a little room, but it's more likely about 3.5.
Okay, thank you.
Is that all you want to ask, Mr. Hirsch? Okay, great. See no further discussion.
Yeah.
Okay. No, it's okay, Mr. Hirsch.
That's okay.
I believe, well, I'll say it on Mr. Hirsch's part, which is this is a direct dupe of the taxpayer as a result of the local towns and authorities not being able to align their tax collection with the needs of school districts. So in essence, what this does is it costs the taxpayers money. Because our cash flow is not aligned with our receipts of the way they collect the tax dollars, we have to take out a note, in this case it's called a TAN, in order to continue to pay for our expenses, because our bills keep coming in, as does our payroll and everything else. We have to take out a short-term loan in order to cover that while we wait for the town's money.
And if I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. You can add.
We also have to back out all our reserve balances. They do not allow us to dip into our cash reserves
Thank you.
to use pay for expenses.
So instead of the county working harder, as we've said, at least I've said for the last 14 years, to bring at least this added expense on the taxpayers back and align the way the collection and payout's done, they continue to leave it the same, and every school district has to take out these TANs at an interest rate, again, increasing our tax base. So with that, any other discussion on 4.6?
Just a quick follow-up to what you just said, Mr. Canberra. The New York State School Boards Association, since I've been the representative from East Williston, has consistently brought this issue up to the powers that be in Albany. And at least for the last 12 years, they've chosen to keep it the way you described it.
Ms. Maggie?
Who underwrites these notes?
We actually go out to bid, and any investor is allowed to bid on the notes, and we go with the lowest interest rate bidder. We use our financial advisors to run that process.
Thank you.
Any other discussion? Seeing no further discussion, I'll call for the vote. All in favor? Item passes 5-0. Thank you. Item 4.7 by itself, may I have a second? Mr. Keefe, discussion? Seeing and hearing no discussion, I'll call for the vote. All in favor? Item passes 5-0. Thank you. 4.8 by itself, may I have a second? Mr. Fallerino, discussion? Seeing and hearing no discussion, I'll call for the vote. All in favor? Item passes 5-0. Thank you. Grouping 4.9 to 4.12 together. May I have a second? Ms. Megji, discussion?
Actually, on that 4.10, that the workshop, can you maybe give a little clarity on that?
I'm sorry, Mr.
Mr. Hirsch
We
is
got a
asking
little
for further
backdrop
clarification on
the-
4.10.
4.10.
Sure, so this is with the Teachers College Reading and Writing Program, a program we have been piloting here really for the last 2 years. We had anticipated doing this training originally back in 2020, and of course, could not do it that summer and have postponed it until such time that we could do it in person. This will work with our K through 7, potentially K through 8 English teachers, ELA teachers, and it will help to enhance the workshop model and the units of study our children learn on both reading and writing.
This is the same as Teachers College Reading Writing. You usually hear it referred to as Teachers College Reading Writing Project in the budget information, so same one.
And could you also give us an update on the IMA and just for the public, what that means? The IMA?
Oh,
is-
the intermunicipal agreement with Roslyn?
Yes.
Yeah, it's an intermunicipal agreement between us and Roslyn for them to provide transportation for certain students to these schools. We sometimes ask our local districts who go to the same schools as us if they can also provide, if we only have a single student going or two students, if they could provide the transportation for them, and we enter into this agreement for a settled price for that student.
Thank you.
Any other discussion, 4.9 to 4.12? Seeing no further discussion, I'm going to call for the vote. All in favor? Items passed 5-0. Thank you. And take 413, 4.13 by itself. May I have a second? Mr. Keefe, discussion? Seeing and hearing no discussion, call for the vote. All in favor? Item passes 5-0. Thank you. I have a walk-on, item number 4.14. I'll read it. Resolve, the Board of Education hereby accepts the resignation of the district clerk effective June 30th, 2022. May I have a second? Ms. Megji, discussion? Seeing and hearing no discussion, we thank you for your time. I'm going to call for the vote. All in favor? Item passes 5-0. I'm going to group items 5.1 to 5.8 together, 5.1 to 5.8 together. May I have a second? Mr. Fallerino, discussion. So a couple of points of discussion. I first want to jump to item number 5.2. Ms. Forden, who has been with us, I know she's watching right now, for 31 years of service to the East Wilson School District, and we would certainly be remiss if we didn't take a moment and thank her, because that is certainly not only a career, but it is a very big percentage of a lifetime, and we thank her for all that she's done for our children and for our families of our district, and she will certainly be missed. I also want to take a moment to thank Rochelle Soroka for her 22 years of service. I want to take a moment to thank Mr. Steve Collier for his 16 years of service for the East Wilson School District. And I want to thank Ms. Randy Israel for her 20 years of service. All significant amounts of time, and we thank them all for their years of service to our children and to our community. So with that, any other discussion on items 5.1 to 5.8? Seeing no further discussion, I'm going to call for the vote. All in favor? Items pass 5-0. We wish everyone well. Thank you. With that, brings me to open time. Anybody? Michael. Yep.
Good evening. I just had a question, if I may, regarding the tax anticipation note. When it's all said and done, what does that cost us? Approximately.
Yeah, well, it costs us about $5,000 in the finance advisor fees and another couple $1,000 in the financial legal fees, and the interest was about $20,000 this year.
So
What is it?
almost $30,000.
So that's
This
a
year,
lot of money.
rates are going, yeah.
$30,000, I
rates
mean,
are
that's
going
real
up.
money, you know? And what is the interest rate? I'm just curious.
This year it was just under 2, I believe, but they're going close to 3 now.
So that's roughly a $30,000 hit every year. And if you could, Mark, you do this from time to time, can you just run by those types of expenses, like there's a sewer expense also, if you could just remind me of the other expenses. I don't want you to spend 20 minutes on this.
I wish I was that good of the
'Cause I know you're really-
the non-children related expenses, as we call them, the mandated expenses.
Yeah, those mandated,
of
that's
which
the right
there are
word, the
many-
mandated,
of
I'm
which
just curious what the other ones are.
There are many throughout a school district process. There's no way I can list them all. I try to highlight the important ones, which are really politically driven, as opposed to some that are mandates that are driven by the state, that are things that you must do. This is not a must-do. This is not a must-do from the standpoint that it could be done differently. You know, there are things that we have to do because they're there for children, and we're mandated to do them for children. This is an example of a must-do because we have no choice, because the state, the county in this case, doesn't want to align and do this right. There are others like that. There are other taxes. Wheatley, we have a sewer tax. We don't even have sewers
Right,
here at
yeah,
Wheatley.
you've
There are
mentioned
many-
this many
There are
times
many
before.
other things that are just things that just hit the taxpayer. This is a big one from a dollar standpoint.
Where does this rank among those
This
others?
is probably one of the highest.
This is one of the highest?
things
All
that
right.
shouldn't have to be, but are.
All right, all right, thank you.
You're welcome. Anyone else for open time? Seeing no further requests for discussion, I am going to make a motion to adjourn. May I have a second? Mr. Keefe, discussion? Seeing no discussion, call for the vote. All in favor? 5-0. Have a great night.